Hello, and welcome to Human Ascension with Ellie. During the past week, there has been a lot of speculation about the birth of a brand new baby, a cute little white baby. And I make a point of describing the baby as being white, not to antagonize anyone, but because having a white baby in the circumstances is quite an event in itself. Details of the birth have reached newspapers all over the world. It's quite extraordinary. As I was researching for today's episode, I spotted reports about the birth of this little white baby in Time Magazine, NBC News, CBC Canada, the Malaysia Sun, the Associated Press, People Magazine, Metro News, South China Morning Post, The Telegraph, ABC News, Fox News 13, and the Arizona Daily Star. Wow. You get the gist, yeah? And there were plenty of other news organizations from all over the world that covered this new, very, very newsworthy birth of this little white baby. These news articles were just the ones that are the tip of the iceberg. So you say, so what? What happened? A white baby was born. It happens all the time, right? Yes. Perhaps it does happen all the time, but not in these circumstances. Because the white baby that I'm talking about was born this week in Yellowstone Park, the huge, sprawling, federally protected national park that spans right across the state of Wyoming and into Montana and Idaho. And I've never seen Yellowstone Park, but it is a place that I'd like to visit one day, perhaps in the spring, and maybe as part of a camper van long weekend, maybe, so that me and a friend or two can soak up the natural surroundings, the healthy air, and enjoy a barbecue or two. No way. I'm not a camping person. In reality, I'd be terrified of the prospect of running into a bear or not getting a good quality shower anywhere. But I was just, hypothesizing. I'll be off at the hotel. Yeah. Okay. So this week, back to serious. A white buffalo calf was born in Yellowstone Park. And as it happens, the birth of a white calf is rare because, as we know, almost all buffalo are brown and black or a combination of these colors. But it was predicted by the indigenous Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota tribes that this calf would one day be born. And the birth would signify a change in the wind, leading to tough decisions with the prospect of better things to come for humanity. But of course, as with everything that we're talking about on this show, the manner in which things progress in the world is really up to us, humanity. And this is yet another example of such a warning. Humans have to do better. That's the mantra. Okay, so let me backtrack a little and give you a bit of detail about what's happened this week. And then we'll delve a little deeper because, of course we will. That's why I'm here. So the white buffalo calf is estimated to have been born around about June 4th. It was spotted by a family who were visiting Yellowstone Park and who had stopped their car, I think because there was a little bit of traffic on one of the roads there, when they saw something they later described as really strikingly white in comparison to the scene of a herd of buffalo in the far distance. They happened to have a proper camera with a telephoto lens, and so they looked closer and realized that what they had spotted was in fact a white buffalo calf, newly born but already on its feet. It was being guided along a trail by its mother. The calf had an all-white body with a black nose, black hoofs, and black eyes. The family took photos and ended up lingering on the scene to watch the calf and its mother for around 45 minutes before it disappeared with its mum into an area of forestry. It's like the family knew that they were seeing something special at this moment. And this, quite coincidentally, goes back to something that occurred around 2,000 years ago, just as the current age of Pisces was beginning. and the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity were being scribed and collated into documents. And there is a chance that it was indeed something very special to see. So, the significance of this newborn white calf, buffalo calf, originates from an event that is said to have taken place around 2,000 years ago, and which centers around three indigenous American tribes that form part of a bigger tribe called the Sioux tribe. The Sioux is a reference name for the wider group of First Nations people of North America in a certain part of the US. Prior to the 17th century, the great nation Sioux tribes lived freely in what is now known as Lake Superior, and also had territories in what we now know of as the states of Minnesota and Wisconsin. They gathered wild rice, they hunted woodland animals, and they used canoes to fish. In around the 18th century, the Sioux tribe began to go to war with other nearby tribes. And these battles pushed the Sioux into southern Minnesota, where the Dakota and Lakota tribes lived. And so they merged. Later in the 19th century, some of the tribes signaled treaties with the US white colonizers, which limited their land space and forced them to rely on payments and rations to survive. The problem is that the US failed to provide the agreed payments and rations, and so the tribes in around the area were forced into starvation. They ended up having to move into Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and some tribes even fled to Canada. It was a period of much hardship for the First Nations people. Now, this was, as I said, around 2,000 years ago. And it was described in Indigenous folklore as being a time when, I quote, nothing was good, food was running out, and the bison or buffalo were disappearing. Unquote. It was a time of great famine, and the chief of the Lakota tribe sent out some scouts to hunt for food. While they were traveling, they saw a white cloud in the distance, and they stopped to marvel at it because it seemed to be out of place in the otherwise clear blue sky. They were amazed when they suddenly saw the cloud disperse, and from inside it emerged a beautiful young native woman. She was dressed in white buckskin and had dark hair, dark skin, and dark eyes. The men were really taken aback, and one of them became quite nervous. The other man, however, wanted to approach the young woman because he was drawn to her extreme beauty, because she was unusually beautiful. His companion tried to stop him, but he ignored his friends and moved forward to the woman. Apparently, he was overtaken by lust or some other type of, caveman aggression. And so he tried to grab her in an embrace. But as he did so, the cloud enveloped both of them and they disappeared. The young woman, a few moments later, reappeared when the clouds dispersed. And she was standing alone, but next to her was nothing more than a pile of the man's bones. He was gone. The other man who'd been watching was terrified and stood in shock, but the woman beckoned him to come to her and assured him that no harm would come to him if he approached her. And so, with hesitation, he did. She explained to him that she was a holy woman with spiritual and supernatural powers, and that if he did as she instructed, his people would rise to become strong again, and their periods of struggle and starvation would end. The woman told the man to return to his encampment and to call the tribe's council of elders and to prepare a feast for her arrival, which is a little bit cheeky, isn't it? Because, these people were starving, but the woman told them to go and prepare a feast for her. And the funny thing is, this part of the story makes you remember all of the examples in the Bible where Jesus told poor people to prepare feasts during their times of hardship. And each time they did, their hardships were turned to times of extraordinary prosperity. I think it might have something to do with the concept of never allowing yourself to become selfish or stingy, even when times are tough, because selfishness begets selfishness, but generosity begets generosity. Perhaps it's something like that. So, anyway, that's what the man did. He followed the holy woman's instructions and returned to his tribe. He asked the council of elders to convene, and a feast was prepared in preparation for her arrival. The young holy woman did come for the feast, and during her time, she stayed with the tribe and she taught them um, 7 sacred ceremonies that she said must be performed to show deference to and to protect Mother Earth. The ceremonies varied and included things like sun dancing and a ritual related to celebrating a young woman's arrival into puberty. Collectively, the ceremonies are symbolic of the relationship between the natural world, the elements, humanity, and the spiritual beings that maintain the cycle of the universe. When the young holy woman was preparing to leave the tribe and return to where she came from, she shared a prophecy that the birth of a white buffalo calf would occur again in the distant future when the tribes were once again experiencing very difficult times. It would mark the moment of the return of the holy woman and would be a signal that times can get better, but it will also be a warning that humanity must better respect its relationship to all living things, including the earth, animal life, the cosmos, and the sea. And then, as she began to depart, she is said to have transformed into a white buffalo calf, and she stood for a while atop a nearby hill to survey the tribes before she finally disappeared. The young holy woman and her teachings are a cornerstone of the Sioux tribal culture and spirituality, embodying the principles of unity, harmony, and respect for all life. And for the Lakota tribe in particular, which were the sub-tribe of the Sioux that experienced the first-hand visitation from the white buffalo calf woman, the birth of a white buffalo calf with a black nose, black eyes, and black hoofs is as relevant to their spiritual beliefs as would be the second coming of Jesus Christ to Christians. There are 2 possible ways in which a buffalo calf can be born white, and both are extremely rare. The first way is through birth defect, leading to what we think of as kind of an albino birth. But in this instance, the calf has clear abnormalities in its biological system, which prevents the formation of color pigments in its skin. In this instance, the entire calf would be white, perhaps with a pink nose or discoloration around the hoofs and light, almost translucent eyes. This is the only possible outcome for an albino set of features, because if the skin pigment cannot form properly, this would be reflected throughout the calf's features in some way and would not exclude, hoofs or eyes or nose, or all of those 3. The other possible way is for a normal birth to occur, but for the calf to carry genes that are seemingly impossible for the bloodline, but without any abnormality of pigments. So the calf overall could be white, and its nose, eyes, and hoofs would remain normal or dark or black in color, just like most and all other buffalo. This is an occurrence that is practically impossible to achieve. There was another white calf that's known to have been born in 1994 in around the same region of the United States, although its features weren't anywhere as striking as the calf born this week. So although the calf born in 1994 could very well have been classified as a white calf, the one this week is so much more in terms of the striking element of white with the black features of hoof and eyes and nose. So I was curious about what the prophecy said about hardships at the time, and I thought that I might go and do a search about what the Sioux tribes are experiencing at this moment in time, at the time that this calf was born. And so this is what came up in my search. Firstly, the tribes are experiencing funding problems. This has particularly affected women's health in the tribal areas, and this is true for most of the First Nations people. The funding that is particularly suffering at the moment relates to family planning and women's reproductive health. Secondly, there has been an escalation of issues relating to drug cartels operating in reservations. South Dakota's Governor, Kristi Noem, recently accused the tribal elders of trying to benefit from the drug activities. This was strongly refuted by tribal elders who admitted that there is a dire situation relating to guns and drugs currently on reservations, but it's not being caused by tribal members, and it's definitely not for the benefit of tribal elders. As a result of the governor's accusations, which are refuted by tribal elders as being unfounded and politically motivated, almost all of South Dakota's tribes have now banned the governor from entering their reservations. And I do suspect that that could end up having a knock-on effect as to their ability to survive and receive funding or some kind of government-sponsored assistance when it's needed. So I'm not sure. That's all I was able to find in that regard. What I also know, though, is that a number of reservations have also had to declare states of emergency due to rampant crime levels that have broken out in reservations, which is believed to be perpetrated. Those crimes are believed to be perpetrated by outsiders, so people who are not resident within the reservations. I didn't see anything in reporting about things like famine or severe hardship, but it does sound as though something quite challenging is occurring to many tribal reservations in the area. When she appeared 2,000 years ago, the white buffalo calf woman told the Lakota tribe that she will return as the white calf with black eyes, black nose, and black hoofs when times are hard for the tribes. And it will be a sign of changes coming to humanity. The birth this week of the white calf is now being proclaimed by many as a fulfillment of this prophecy. As most of you know, I'm located in Australia, and so it was always going to be a little bit unlikely that I'd be the first one to hear about the birth of this new white buffalo calf. However, I did hear about it pretty quickly from some of my viewers over at the Ellie Dreams Down Under channel. And one of the first people to contact me also sent me a painting of the white buffalo calf woman as she is said to have appeared around 2,000 years ago. It was really quite astonishing because the painting was almost identical to the painting that Chris Bledsoe had commissioned of the angelic lady in white, who also came to him as a bull and then transformed into a woman. The lady in white was also sharing a prophecy, and I've covered her and Chris Bledsoe's experience extensively on this show in previous episodes and also on the Ellie Dreams and Under channel. Both paintings, whether it be the buffalo calf woman or the lady in white, they depict a beautiful young woman dressed in white, hovering barefoot, a few feet off the ground. And in both instances, the paintings include either a bull or a buffalo to demonstrate how, for the purposes of being able to demonstrate how the woman has transformed herself from animal to human and then back to animal again as she transitioned back and forth onto Earth. I've also devoted another one of my shows to explaining the various different ages of humanity, and in particular the age of Taurus, relating to the zodiac sign of Taurus, which is represented by an image of a bull. It actually relates to the formation of the stars in the constellation of Taurus and how it's sort of shaped like a bull. The age of Taurus is said to have taken place over a 2000 year period between around 4500 BC and 2200 BC. Taurus is a feminine zodiac sign, and as such, it is demonstrated through archaeological findings that the age of Taurus was a time when humanity worshipped a feminine form of the divine. However, as humanity transitioned into the age of Aries, which reflects a masculine sign and refers to a period during which a form of masculine divine was worshipped, well, the masculine forces became distorted. What should have occurred in the next age cycle is that the age of Pisces, which is another feminine sign, should have resulted in the transition into the worship of another feminine principle of the divine. But instead, the masculine forces had turned dark and defeated the feminine, and then continued to suppress the feminine for another 2,000 years or so beyond their period of official kind of predicted reign. Those 2,000 or so years have now passed, and it's time for a new age to begin again. The mark of a time for transition occurs when the world is struggling to overcome hardship, division, hatred, and great conflict. Every new age appears to herald a new kind of sun god, a deity figure that is central to the style of worship that is followed by humanity. The state for humanity may have been in crisis, or perhaps it was a major event or a series of events that shifted the mood of humanity, for which, and kind of ignited a significant change in the mindset of the people. Humanity was perhaps sick and tired of the status quo, which at the beginning of the age, regardless of the age, 2,000 years earlier, was considered to be shiny and new. Filled with hope and wonder, with brand new teachings about reality and the existence of life. Now, at the end of the age, 2,000 years later, like we are experiencing now, humanity wants something different. So, at the end of a 2,000 year cycle or age, it's hard to say what the catalyst is for change to occur, but something appears to weaken the status quo so that a new God can transition the world into a new reality. To be honest, it sounds a little bit as though we're being played like a game of ping pong, but of course, each of us only lives around 80 years. And as with everything else in our reality, the ages are simply a cycle with a smaller cycle inside them and an even smaller cycle inside that. And of course, there is the elliptical cycle of the Earth around the sun, in which each of the ages resides. And no doubt there is an even bigger cycle in which our own solar system revolves, and then an even larger cycle in which the collective solar system of the entire universe revolves. And maybe multiple universes are revolving around that too. So, all in all, everything seems to go around and around. So we have this recurring theme here of a 2,000 year cycle where at the end of the cycle, a beautiful woman appears. Related to a bull or buffalo calf of some kind, and provides direction for the next age. And it does make me wonder why all of it has to be so complicated, though. I mean, no kidding. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking to myself, why is it that a heavenly creature, impossibly beautiful and shimmery, who transforms into a different species of creature and hovers above the earth in her bare feet, has to share these cryptic prophecies about the fate of humanity in ways that we can only speculate about and nobody really understands? If the messaging is really so important, why not just hijack all the TV, radio, and social media platforms at once and broadcast a simultaneous message around the world for every man, woman, and child to see at the same time, and talk to us in plain language that we can understand, and just tell us what to do next, and be expressly clear that if we don't do it exactly as we've been instructed, then we're all going to get vaporized at 3 p.m. next Wednesday or something. Why can't it be that simple? After all, these heavenly creatures can transform themselves into other creatures at will. So why can't hijacking our social media be a possibility as well? I just don't know. I mean, there's definitely something going on here, and it's happening right now. Why is it that these superior beings are so incredible and so intelligent that they can travel to other galaxies or other parallel universes and can perform so many supernatural acts? They have far more superior intellect than any of us, and they understand us so much more than we even understand ourselves. But the one thing none of these beings seem to be able to do is to get their message across in a way that humans will actually listen to. I guess we have a lot of future episodes in order to finally figure this whole thing out. And I have asked the question later on today, which I'll share with you in a moment. But in the meantime, I am quite taken aback by the many similarities between the white buffalo calf woman, the angelic lady in white that appeared for Chris Bledsoe, and how there are so many similarities around the world with other beautiful young women appearing in an angelic manner, dressed in white, and prophesizing the future for humanity. But the white buffalo calf woman is just related to the Sioux tribes of North America. And that got me wondering if I could find a similar series of legends or prophecies coming from other tribes that are dispersed in other parts of the country, perhaps. So I did a little look around, and I have to say that I did find one or two things that might be of interest. So, just a reminder that the white buffalo calf woman, the prophecy relating to her that belongs to the Sioux tribes, was all about a time around 2,000 years ahead of her first known appearance, where she said that she would return when the tribes were experiencing a period of great difficulties. Her return would mark a choice for humanity: either choose to give greater care to all living things and the earth that we live on, or risk our own extinction. So the Hopi tribes, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, it's either Hopi or Hopi tribes of North America, are primarily located in the state of Arizona. And so there's a distinct geographic difference from the Sioux tribes that were dispersed between Montana and North and South Dakota. The Hopi tribes also have an interesting prophecy, which is aptly called the Hopi prophecies. Imagine that. The Hopi prophecies, or Hopi prophecies, describe a time of social and ecological disruption that must first become purified in order to ultimately bring a time of lasting peace for people all over the world. The Hopi prophecies are a collection of ancient teachings and predictions that serve as a spiritual guide for the Hopi people and others who may be interested in their wisdom. The prophecies encourage humanity to choose a path of spiritual growth, environmental stewardship, and mutual respect for one another. It's considered to be necessary in order for there to be a more harmonious and balanced world. One of the most profound Hopi prophecies, which is completely impossible for me to pronounce, sorry, but I'm going to give it a go. I think it's something like Koyanis Katis, which sounds a bit Greek, doesn't it? Actually, I did try to see how others spell it or pronounce it, and even though it's pronounced or it's spelled Koyanis Katis, people seem to always pronounce it Koyanis Katsi. So I guess I'll just have plenty of competition out there for worst possible pronunciation. I'm really sorry. I'm notoriously not very good at pronouncing words that have a confusing spelling compared to what I'm accustomed to. So apologies. Anyway, that prophecy, the one that starts with a K and is tough to pronounce, is about the total disintegration of what is referred to as the life of harmony and balance. It relates to a point in time when people lived in peace for a while, but then as the world got more and more populated, the areas of population became very crowded. People became sick and tired of each other, and continuously living a standard kind of life that was the same sort of drudge every day. That sounds really quite prophetic, doesn't it? I think it kind of rings true during the current day. We tend to live the same kind of thing every day in a similar kind of routine. And we might not see people every day or the same people every day, but there is a lot of chatter out there with social media and the news and whatever is happening with family, friends, or whatever might be the latest thing on TV or the latest trend or the talking points out there. And sometimes it might even begin to feel a bit overwhelming with all of this information and chatter constantly bombarding us. Plus, there are tons of rules all the time that we have to follow and bills that we always have to pay. And there's always talk of some kind of threat around the corner that we need to worry about for some reason, even though we're basically powerless. And it is definitely difficult to feel balanced and harmonious when there is so much coming at us at once, every single day of the year, every single year. And that's the current state of play. So, in this prophecy, the people that feel a bit like we do now try to create a more interesting life for themselves. So they invent what's called a game, or it's referred to by the indigenous people as being a game. And the game begins to take over their lives, leading to addiction, neglect of the individual, and a disregard for the collective. So that throws everything kind of a bit out of balance. And it sounds a little bit like the invention of the internet, doesn't it? Because the invention of the internet has sort of upended life for humanity. It has great things about it. I mean, I wouldn't have this show if it wasn't for the internet, or my YouTube channel, for example. I use the internet every day to shop, to buy things, to connect with people, to stay up to date on whatever I need to. And pretty much everything else in my life has some kind of link to the internet. But I have to admit that the internet has also made things like trolls and online bullying possible. And people tend to send emails to each other rather than just get together and talk. Or they might not even bother doing that. They might just leave a nasty comment somewhere, or a bad review. Or they might just block you on Facebook or something to avoid having to act like a real human being. So yes, everything since the internet, which might be the game that the tribes were talking about, appears to be out of balance right now and is sort of breeding a disharmonious humanity. The Hopi people believe that there have been 3 previous world ages, all of which died in the end because humanity, along with a variety of cataclysms, brought everything to an end. The first cataclysm was a massive fire caused by an asteroid and volcanic eruptions, which completely destroyed the Earth. The second cataclysm was a sudden worldwide drop in temperatures, which led to the Ice Age. And then the third cataclysm was a massive rainstorm that flooded the entire earth, killing almost every human, just like the biblical flood that is said to have occurred somewhere between 10,000 and 5,000 BC. I will always be in awe of how practically every culture in the world remembers the big flood that wiped out everything. What it does show is that it probably really did happen, because everybody seems to think that it did. So, what the Hopi prophecy states is that we are currently in the process of a 4th cataclysm. There is an impending global destruction that isn't merely random Earth change related, but it's also dependent upon humanity's disregard for Mother Earth and the spiritual instructions given by our Creator. The Hopi prophecies serve to remind us that we are here for a purpose, and our purpose is the care for the earth and to be kind to each other and to live in harmony with everything around us as a way of demonstrating that we are aware of the interconnectedness between all things, whether it be animal, tree, or the earth, or maybe in the skies, or even in the oceans. But also that the overall purpose for being kind and respectful towards everything and everyone around us is so that we can preserve ourselves and so that humanity can survive. The Anishinaabe tribes, and I think I got that one right, are located generally in the Ottawa region of Canada and some of the northern states of the US, including Minnesota, Kansas, and Michigan. The Anishinaabe tribes also have a prophecy that that includes elements similar to what we've heard before in this show. The tribes have a 7-fire prophecy, which relates to 7 prophecies that were given to humanity to help it to learn how to survive. Basically, the prophecies, each of which is called a fire, talk about changes that will happen to the earth in coming years and the many things that humanity would need to do in order to keep up with those changes and continue to sustain human life. And surprise, surprise, you'll never guess, the ways in which humanity can protect itself from extinction include making a choice between 2 distinctly different options. The first option is materialism, lo and behold, and greed. And the second option is about increasing to greater spirituality. Isn't it funny how no matter where we look for information on how humanity can best serve itself, we're constantly coming across the same messaging? Less of the material, more of the spiritual. The secret to greater spirituality, according to the 7 fires prophecy, is to show respect towards others and everything around us. It's uncanny, absolutely uncanny. And the prophecies state that we should choose spirituality to survive, but if we choose materialism, then we will ultimately cease to exist. So it really does make you wonder, are we living in a kind of a intergalactic game of some kind? Are there a group of celestial beings somewhere in the universe who are watching us here on Earth on a big screen somewhere, waiting to see if we make the right choices? If this is really a game, then I have to say I feel very sorry for the fellow who bet everything that he owns on us doing the right things, because he must be truly suffering by now, whoever he is. We never seem to do the right things until it's the only thing left to do. There are other prophecies that are specific to other tribes of First Peoples in North America, and many of them are focused on a similar set of messages. And so I won't go into all of them, but it's just so weird that we don't seem to be realizing that the messaging is obviously important, because we're still polluting the earth and we're still being cruel to animals and we're being cruel to each other. And we seem to think that we are winning when we fill our houses with endless amounts of crap, when in fact, the more crap we own, the more we're really proving that we are losing in the one task that we've been set by our Creator. But more than anything, I really am a bit confused about how such a prolific creator of humanity, who is so very well supported by angels and other worker bees who come and speak to us in a variety of different ways quite regularly, don't you think? Again and again, for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years all over the world. I'm confused about how they still haven't figured out how to tell us what they need us to know and what they need us to do in a way that will finally sink in and get us to act in the way that they've instructed us to. And so, yes, I kind of wanted to ask this question and see what kind of answers I could get. But, I can't ask the ancient Indigenous people. And today's episode was all about the prophecies coming from the First Nations people, which is an ancient race. So we know how they feel about humanity and what humanity should do. But what I want to know is why humanity isn't listening. So I thought I'd change things up a little bit and ask someone from the very, very modern age, because who's best to understand the response or lack of response by the modern human than someone who is thoroughly modern themselves? So, in all my genius, I decided to ask the Microsoft Bing artificial intelligence bot, as you do. And this is what the bot said in response. So my question was, why is it that humans never seem to listen to the warnings that we receive about how to protect humanity from unnecessary and possible extinction? The bot's answer was as follows. Okay. This is a complex question, and the answer can vary greatly depending on the context. However, there are a few general reasons why some people might not heed the warnings for humanity. Firstly, there is the issue of cognitive dissonance. This is a psychological theory that suggests that people have a hard time holding two contradictory beliefs at once, so they ignore or reject information that conflicts with their existing beliefs. The second reason relates to lack of trust. If people don't trust the source of the information, then they're less likely to heed the warnings. This can be due to past experiences or biases or a lack of transparency from the messenger. And then, of course, in the current day, there is a third reason. There is a lot of information coming at people from everywhere, all of the time. And this is referred to as an overload of information. In the digital age, people are bombarded with information from a vast variety of sources. This can lead to difficulty in discerning which warnings are credible and which are not. Yeah. There's also a fourth issue, and that is the issue of normalcy bias. And this relates to the natural bias that many people have that causes them to begin to believe that everything is okay if life has been normal for quite some time. People in this instance are led to underestimate both the likelihood of a disaster and its possible effects because people believe that things will always function the way that things normally have been functioning. The fifth and final reason relates to the tendency to opt for short term thinking. Some people prioritize immediate benefits such as money or comfort over long term consequences. This can cause them to ignore warnings that don't seem to impact them directly in the present moment. That's it. Okay, so the artificial intelligence bot owned by Microsoft seemed to think that there were those five reasons or five key reasons why humanity isn't listening to the warnings about humanity. And the reasons are cognitive dissonance, lack of trust, overload of information, normalcy bias, and short term thinking. I just want to say, because it is my show and I'm the boss, I would like to add another reason that I think is also relevant. And that's because everyone is waiting, and that's because I think everyone is waiting for someone else to do something first. I think people are often guilty of that. And one of the easiest ways to recognize that this is a thing is when you happen to see something, let's just say you see something going on, like someone's shoplifting, or a fight breaks out in the street, or you see one person bullying another person, or something like that. You know, those are just a few of the examples. Mostly when something like these things happen, everyone who is witnessing the moment pretty much looks away or pretends not to notice or just fails to act. Yes, there may be some people who jump in to stop a fight or will speak up and tell a bully to stop being a bully, or maybe they'll approach a shoplifter and tell them to stop stealing whatever it is that they're stealing. But most of the people around won't be the first ones to act. They might jump in later when they know that others already have done so. So perhaps it's because they're afraid of going first. Because, you know, if you're first and then you're the only one, then you're on your own. But maybe it doesn't, it's because it doesn't affect them personally, so they don't care. I'm not really sure. I mean, I might be overlapping with some of the normalcy bias or the cognitive dissonance stuff. I'm not sure. I sometimes get asked to ask the cards, for example, how good people might be able to persuade bad people to be better. And I've given up asking, quite frankly, because the cards always give me the same answer. They always say that we should focus on our own behaviors and not spend time trying to think about what other people would do or should do or trying to change other people. But if we do what we can do to be good people who live well and respect others, and then it will, with time, become naturally addictive, and our behavior will be noticed and appreciated and emulated by others. And yes, it will take a very long time that way. But, it also took a really long time for us to get to where we are now. The way in which people have grown to distrust each other and to rely on misinformation and to willfully choose ignorance or selfishness, it hasn't been something that happened overnight. It's been nurtured and ignored and neglected for generations. And it might take exactly that long to unravel it. I'm actually going to backtrack slightly as well and tell you a story about one of the other reasons that the AI bot gave me, or a story related to one of those reasons. And that's the reason that the AI bot mentioned about short term thinking. As many of you know, I am about 6 weeks in from having had a total hip replacement. And last year, thereabouts, I also had a knee replacement. So I've been working on my rehabilitation very hard these days. I am so keen to get physically fit and healthy and to put all of those surgeries and the pain and discomfort well behind me. So I'm very energetic and very dedicated. Just prior to first having my knee replacement, which was late 2022 actually, I met a woman who I still don't know very well, but little does she realize that she's had a profound impact on my health and my decision making. She's about 10 years younger than me, so in her 40s, and she told me that she was really sporty in her youth. But for some reason, beginning at around about the time of her mid 30s, she had to have a hip replacement. Perhaps it had something to do with her sport activities, and maybe it had resulted in an injury or something that could only be fixed with a hip replacement. I don't know. I never did ask her about the details of that, so I'm just assuming that it must have been something like that, especially because she said she'd been very sporty and she was very young when she needed this surgery. Anyway, 10 years later, in her mid to late 40s, she's already had her new hip for around 10 years. And it had never been okay since the surgery. She still doesn't walk properly. She's spending a lot of time and money at the physiotherapist, getting remedial massages. She spends a fortune at the she actually spent a fortune to put in a spa at home to help her to do hot water exercises for her hip. She doesn't walk very much because it's too painful. And when I met her, she was also needing surgery on her feet because somehow the issues with her hip and her failure to heal properly had caused some kind of nerve issues that were affecting her feet and giving her pain when she was standing up. So she's really, really struggling. And it's been 10 years. It really sounded horrendous to me. But then she told me a few other things. She said that when she got the surgery, she didn't bother to do the physio exercises that she'd been prescribed because they were too painful to do. And she also had been told to sleep on her back and to restrict the kinds of movements that she could do relating to her hip for the first 6 to 8 weeks. But she got sick of not being able to sleep properly after a few days. And so she ignored the doctor's advice and she decided to sleep on her stomach, almost from the very first day out of hospital. Because the short term avoidance of pain meant more to her than the promise of doing her physio correctly. And the short term comfort of sleeping well was more important to her than the need to properly protect her hip in the first few weeks of healing. This is a true story. Now, I'm only telling you this because I honestly barely know this woman. And so there is no chance, I hope, fingers crossed, of her ever knowing that I'm talking about her on this show. But the truth is, even if she did somehow accidentally stumble across this show, she'd never probably really figure out that it was me that she had spoken to all those years ago. But I am mentioning this because it's so true, so true, that I really feel it's appropriate to use as an example related to humanity. When I first had my surgery, and that very first day when the physiotherapist came into my room, this was my knee surgery, and told me that I had to stand up and try and walk on my newly replaced knee. I think it had been something like 15 hours that I had this new knee in with a great big scar, whopping scar on my leg. I was terrified, but I heard a little whisper in my ear, and all it said was the woman's name. I won't use her real name just in case. Instead, I'm going to call her Cassandra. Okay. So a little voice in my ear whispered, Cassandra, Cassandra. And when I realized who the voice was referring to, I remembered how the woman had talked about how she avoided the physio so that she could experience comfort in the short term. And it cost her so far 10 years of her life, where she's still so young at only 40 something, and she barely has any mobility. And she's never comfortable at all. So I got out of bed, as painful as it was, and I defied the pain and I began walking around, at first with a walking frame and then with crutches, and then I was down to a single crutch and then a walking stick, etc., because I wasn't going to let short-term comfort mean that I suffer long-term pain. And it was because of that my knees recovery was record fast. Yes, the physio exercises were very uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, but then they got less and less uncomfortable, and then they weren't uncomfortable. And my new knee healed beautifully, really, really quickly. And in a similar way, this time with my hip, I was put on restrictions for sleep, and I also couldn't move in certain ways for the early weeks after my surgery. The hardest part for me, though, was the sleep. I just couldn't sleep in the position that they had permitted me to sleep in, which was the corpse pose, just terrible. And for days at a time, I'd be averaging about 1 to 2 hours of sleep. This went on for around 4 weeks. But every time I was tempted to move over onto my side or my stomach just to get a bit of sleep, a little voice in my ear would say, Cassandra, Cassandra. And that's all I needed to hear. As a result, my hip has experienced a really speedy recovery too. No, I didn't have any sleep for a long time, but I'm sleeping now. And I'm actually doing really well. And it's been 6 weeks and I'm back to walking my dog and doing all of the things that I have not been able to do for years. And it's just promising to get better and better. We live in a world where everything is so complicated and difficult and overwhelming, and sometimes we just want to take the easy way out. I totally get it. But the thing is, and I'm guilty of it sometimes too, so, because I'm human. But the thing is, choosing comfort now in the short term can end up leaving us with a long-term future of discomfort later on. And who knows how long that's going to last. I think the messaging for humanity is very much the same thing. We may have all kinds of excuses as to why we can't be more respectful of each other and protective of the earth and kinder to animals, whether they're our pets or simply the wildlife out there in the world. Why are we hunting for sport? Can't we go bowling instead? And why are we road raging in the streets? Can't we just show up to a meeting 5 minutes later? And why are we hating different races or different faiths or different nationalities? Aren't we all just humans with people that we love who are all trying to achieve a good life with love and friendship and enough food on the table for ourselves and our families? And why are we so greedy? I mean, how much stuff can we shove into our caskets after we die? What are we doing? Change happens with just one person. And we know which person that is, don't we? It's us. It's me. The ancient populations of the world knew what it took to protect the earth and its animals and even ourselves. But somehow we, in all our glory of being so modern, we keep forgetting. The answer to the question to everything appears to be that we, or rather me, it's me. It's my responsibility to heed the warnings. It's my responsibility to do the right things whenever I can. I don't have to be the winner of an invisible contest of materialistic kind of pursuits. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I don't have to be the most popular or whatever, or the prettiest or whatever other measuring stick I've imposed on myself. I just need to look deep inside and make sure I'm doing what's right for the planet and everyone in it. It starts and ends with me. And that's all there is. It's just about me. If you'd like to know more about what I do when I'm not here talking with you, then check out my channel on YouTube. It's called Ellie Dreams and Under, and I produce a new tarot video every day of the year, on a wide variety of subjects. I also have a podcast called Meat Potatoes Tarot, which is one of the most surefire ways to learn how to read tarot like a pro, one step at a time. And I'm working on getting my first book out. It's tough to find time to tie up all those loose ends, but I'm getting there slowly. I get it all done eventually, I do. Thank you to everyone who's watching one of KGRA's broadcasting platforms. If you'd like to become a KGRA member, don't forget to use promo code Ellie, that's me, to get 30% off your subscription. So that's it for today. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.